At exactly 9:02 am on a rainy Tuesday morning, my 15 years of loyalty to Nexus Fleet Logistics were completely erased with a single click of a mouse. We were on our weekly company-wide operations call. There were exactly 42 people on the line, including regional supervisors, dispatch managers, and the entire upper executive team. The digital meeting room was dead silent except for the low humming of my desktop computer fan. That was the exact moment when James Miller, our newly appointed 31-year-old vice president of operations, decided to put on a public show. Without warning, James shared his computer screen for everyone on the call to see. He did not talk about weekly shipping delays, and he did not mention rising fuel costs. Instead, he pulled up the live administrator directory for our core data cluster. This cluster was the digital heart of our entire logistics company. I watched my monitor, my coffee mug frozen halfway to my mouth. James moved his mouse slowly and deliberately across the screen until the white cursor hovered right over my profile name, Margaret Taylor, Principal Data Architect. He wanted everyone to watch this happen in real time. He wanted everyone to see exactly who held the power now. James cleared his throat, his voice filled with a smooth, polished confidence that he usually saved for his presentations to the board of directors. He looked directly into his webcam and spoke into his microphone. "Your era of gatekeeping our data is over, Margaret," he said. "It is time for modern leadership." Then, he clicked his mouse. He did not just adjust a simple setting. He completely revoked my master administrative credentials live on screen in front of 42 of my professional peers. My monitor flashed once, and then a cold, bold warning message appeared across my main database window. Access denied. The entire system I had built from the ground up, the servers I had protected and maintained for over a decade, suddenly locked me out completely. The emotional weight of that moment hit me like a physical blow to the chest. It was a cold, public execution designed to humiliate me and to warn anyone else who might think about questioning his authority. James smiled, a small, satisfied smirk crossing his young face on the video feed. He expected me to react. He expected me to gasp, to interrupt the call, or to beg him to reconsider his decision in front of the entire company. He desperately wanted a fight so he could prove how strong he was. But I did not give him that satisfaction. I sat in absolute silence in my small office, watching my screen turn completely gray. I did not argue. I did not raise my voice, and I did not let a single tear fall. I just looked at the cold text that read, "Access denied." My heart was pounding. Not out of fear, but out of a sudden, strange clarity. James thought he had just won the ultimate corporate chess match. He thought he had cleared away an old, expensive obstacle to make room for his own bright future. What he did not know, and what his expensive business school degree could never teach him, was that he had just pulled the pin out of a live grenade. He thought he was locking me out of a system. In reality, he had just unlocked a door to absolute chaos. To understand why that single click was so dangerous, you have to understand who I am and what I built. My name is Margaret Taylor. I am 49 years old, and I am a single mother. For the past 15 years, my entire life revolved around Nexus Fleet Logistics. When I first walked through the doors of this company, it was a tiny, struggling business. We owned exactly 20 delivery trucks, and our tracking system was nothing more than a giant dry erase whiteboard hanging on a wall. I was hired to build their very first digital database. Over the next 15 years, I watched that tiny business grow into a massive enterprise. Today, Nexus Fleet Logistics manages a fleet of over 4,000 delivery trucks. We handle shipping, tracking, and delivery logistics for some of the biggest Fortune 500 companies in the entire country. It is a multi-million-dollar operation that runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But while the company grew massive and wealthy, my life stayed very simple. I used my salary to pay off my mortgage and to put my daughter through a good college so she would never have to struggle the way I did. I did not care about fancy job titles or corporate politics. I cared about the work. I had a quiet competence, and I took deep pride in knowing that the entire company relied on my brain. Specifically, they relied on me to manage the vault. That is the internal name I gave to the central database server. The vault is the invisible foundation of the entire company. It routes every single shipment, stores every customer address, and tracks every billing contract. If the vault stops working for even 5 minutes, 4,000 trucks stop moving, and millions of dollars are lost instantly. For 15 years, I made heavy sacrifices to keep that server alive. I cannot count how many weekends I missed, or how many late nights I spent staring at blue text on a black screen while my daughter slept in the other room. While upper management sat in beautiful sunlit offices and took all the credit for our record-breaking profits, I was the ghost in the machine. The executives liked to show off our company to investors. They would point to our beautiful website and our modern mobile apps. They truly believed that our technology was a perfect self-running machine. But they did not understand the reality. The company looked sleek and modern on the outside, but its actual survival depended entirely on me. Because our core system was built on old legacy code, it could not automatically handle the massive volume of new data coming in every single day. Every evening, after everyone else went home to their families, I performed hidden manual data cleanups. I would sit at my desk until midnight, manually fixing broken code, clearing out system jams, and balancing the data loads. It was exhausting, thankless work, but I did it faithfully because I loved the company and I felt responsible for its daily success. I was the only person alive who knew how to balance the weight of that massive digital system. By revoking my master access, James Miller had not just insulted an old employee. He had unknowingly removed the only pillar holding up the entire roof of his house. James Miller arrived at Nexus Fleet Logistics exactly 3 months before that fateful Tuesday morning. He was hired straight from a prestigious business school, carrying a shiny master's degree, a resume full of elite internships, and a collection of tailored suits that cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. The chief executive officer, Arthur, was completely charmed by him. To the older executives, James looked like the brilliant future of the company. He was young, highly energetic, and spoke in a rapid-fire language of modern corporate buzzwords that sounded incredibly impressive in a boardroom, but actually meant very little in the real world. He spent his days talking about synergistic operational scaling, digital asset optimization, and automated workflow leverage. But to me, James was just an empty suit who had never spent a single hour doing real, manual work. From his very first week at the office, I noticed a dangerous pattern in his management style. James did not understand how our actual logistics business functioned. He did not know how a physical package traveled from a cold warehouse in Chicago to a customer's doorstep in Miami. More importantly, he completely lacked any understanding of the massive technical infrastructure that kept our business alive. To James, our complex, multi-layered database cluster was just a collection of simple buttons on a screen. He truly believed that enterprise software was magic. In his mind, once a system was built, it would run perfectly forever without any human care or intervention. He quickly saw my department and my salary as an easy target to advance his own career. James wanted a rapid promotion to senior vice president, and he knew the fastest way to get it was to show the board of directors that he could instantly cut operational expenses. He publicly promised the CEO that he could slash our technology maintenance costs by a massive 40% within his first 100 days on the job. To achieve that impossible number, he needed to eliminate my position entirely. I was the highest paid engineer at the company, a reflection of my 15 years of flawless service and irreplaceable institutional knowledge. James began his campaign against me by slowly chipping away at my authority and my self-respect. It started with small, passive-aggressive moves. He would forget to include my email address on critical project updates. Then, he stopped inviting me to the weekly operations and strategy meetings that I had personally established a decade ago. When I confronted him about these sudden exclusions in the hallway, he would give me a fake, polished smile and say, "Margaret, I am just trying to protect your valuable time. We're just handling minor administrative details today. You don't need to waste your specialized energy in these boring meetings." The growing disrespect reached a humiliating peak 3 weeks before he revoked my server access. James announced that my quiet corner office was urgently needed to accommodate a new junior assistant manager he was bringing in. He relocated my entire workspace down to a tiny windowless storage room in the basement, situated right next to the roaring server closet. The room was freezing cold, smelled constantly of electrical ozone, and vibrated day and night from the heavy machinery on the other side of the wall. It was a clear, insulting message meant to break my spirit. He wanted me to get angry, lose my temper, and quit my job so the company wouldn't have to pay me a single cent of severance. But I just swallowed my pride, placed my daughter's graduation photo on the cheap metal desk, and kept performing my vital nightly data cleanups. I kept protecting the company because I foolishly believed my worth would speak for itself. I was wrong. James didn't care about operational safety. He only cared about his own spotlight. The moment the company-wide operations call ended, my computer screen flashed with a direct message from James's personal assistant. The message was short and cold. "James needs to see you in his office immediately." I took a deep breath, stood up from my desk, and walked up the concrete stairs from the basement to the executive floor. James's office was a massive corner cube made of expensive glass and polished chrome, offering a beautiful view of the city skyline. It was an environment designed to make visitors feel small and intimidated, but as I stepped through the heavy glass door, I felt nothing but a cold, steady calm. James was sitting comfortably behind his wide mahogany desk, tapping a gold pen against a leather notebook. He did not ask me to sit down, and he did not look me in the eye. Instead, he reached into his drawer and slid a thick, stapled document across the smooth wood toward me. "This is your official severance agreement, Margaret," he said, using a fake tone of professional sympathy. "As I stated on the call, we are restructuring the data division. The company is moving in a modern direction, and your manual role has been made completely redundant. You have exactly 24 hours to sign this paperwork. If you refuse, I will terminate your employment for gross insubordination, and you will leave this building with absolutely nothing." I looked down at the document. The severance offer was shockingly low. They were offering me just 4 weeks of basic pay in exchange for 15 years of flawless, dedicated service. It was an insult, a final kick while I was already down on the ground. I looked up at him, maintaining absolute eye contact, and asked a simple, direct question. "Who is going to run the nightly database reconciliation, James? Who is going to manually check the data handshakes between the live truck tracking system and the legacy archive?" James let out a short, dismissive laugh that echoed loudly against the glass walls. "We don't need your outdated manual checks anymore, Margaret. That is old-school thinking from a dinosaur era. Last week, I hired an offshore software firm to install a cheap automation script into the main network. It runs on a basic digital timer and handles all those daily database balances automatically for a tiny fraction of your high salary. The technology runs itself now. Your legacy is officially automated, and your services are no longer required." Hearing those arrogant words changed something deep inside my soul. It was the ultimate turning point of my professional life. For 15 years, I had treated Nexus Fleet Logistics like my own family. I had sacrificed my personal life, stayed up past midnight protecting their data, and fixed critical errors before our clients ever found out. I did all of it because I believed in corporate loyalty and hard work. But looking at James's smug, satisfied smile, I finally realized a painful truth. You cannot be loyal to a system that views you as nothing more than a disposable expense. In that exact second, I made a silent vow. I was completely done protecting a company and a boss that did not value my existence. I did not argue with him. I did not raise my voice, and I did not point out the catastrophic flaw in his cheap automation plan. I did not tell him that a simple digital timer could never handle the unpredictable dynamic data jams of a 4,000-truck logistics network. I simply left the severance paperwork untouched on his desk. I turned around, walked down to my tiny basement room, and placed my few personal belongings, a framed picture of my daughter, my favorite coffee mug, and a small desk plant, into a single cardboard box. As I walked out of the building for the last time into the pouring rain, I did not feel sad. I felt a strange, beautiful sense of freedom. I left James completely alone in his beautiful office, holding the keys to a system he did not understand, entirely unaware that the countdown to disaster had already begun. For the first 3 days after walking out of Nexus Fleet Logistics, I did something I had not done in over 15 years. I woke up at 8 o'clock in the morning, poured myself a hot cup of tea, and sat out in my backyard garden. I spent hours reading books and planting flowers without looking at a computer screen. I watched the birds fly across the sky, felt the warm morning sun on my face, and listened to the wind blow through the trees. For 15 long years, my phone would usually be ringing off the hook by that hour. I was completely used to constant text messages, emergency system alerts, and frantic phone calls from managers who did not know how to fix a basic computer glitch. But now, my phone was completely silent. It was a strange, beautiful sense of peace that I had completely forgotten existed. My daughter called me during her lunch break, and for the first time in her life, I did not have to cut our conversation short to fix a broken data server. I was completely present, and it felt incredible. But while I was enjoying my quiet garden, I knew exactly what was happening inside the cold server room back at the office. I knew there was a silent, digital countdown ticking away, and nobody inside that building had any idea it was even there. When James Miller proudly revoked my master access and told me that his cheap automated software would take over my job, he truly believed he was just replacing a person. He thought my 15 years of experience could be replaced by a few lines of basic computer code written by strangers. He did not realize he was disabling a safety shield. Let me explain the hidden leverage I left behind. 10 years ago, when our logistics network began to grow rapidly, I wrote a custom security script deep inside the foundation of the Vault database. Because our company handles millions of data points every single day, including truck locations, driver hours, customer addresses, and financial contracts, the system is constantly under a massive amount of stress. To keep the database from crashing under all that heavy weight, the core server requires a manual security token refresh every 24 hours. This daily refresh was my most important job. Every single night, before I went to bed, I had to log into the network using my unique private master keys. I had to sit at my computer, review the error logs, and issue the secret master security token to keep the lines of communication open. I would manually verify the data handshakes between our live truck tracking system and our old legacy archive files. It was like a digital password that changed every day, telling the server that everything was running safely and correctly under human supervision. Without me logging in to perform that manual handshake, the core server would eventually get completely confused. It would see millions of incoming data points pouring into the system without any master authorization. After a few days, the server would automatically assume that the company was under a massive cyber attack. To protect itself from being destroyed or corrupted, the database was programmed to go into an automatic lockdown mode. It would start quarantining live files, hiding customer profiles, and burying active shipping contracts deep inside encrypted security folders where no ordinary user could find them. I knew this lockdown was going to happen. I knew it down to the exact hour, but because James had publicly humiliated me, stripped away my access, and told me that his new offshore software would handle everything, I no longer had any legal or moral duty to say a word. I had spent 15 years protecting people who ultimately viewed me as an expensive line item on a balance sheet. Now, the shield was officially down. I took another slow sip of my tea, leaned back in my garden chair, and let the clock run down. The digital dominoes began to fall rapidly on Friday morning, exactly 4 days after I walked out of the building. Inside the glossy executive offices of Nexus Fleet Logistics, the morning probably started out like any other day. James Miller likely arrived at work in his expensive suit, holding a hot latte, and feeling completely confident about his new automated system. But at exactly 8:15 a.m., the first major alarm went off, and the entire illusion of his perfect corporate world began to crumble. The first phone call came from Omnimart, our largest and most valuable retail client. They paid our company over $10 million a year to manage the shipping and tracking for their massive supply chain. That morning, their logistics director logged into their custom shipping dashboard and found a completely blank screen. 500 of their delivery trucks were currently driving down the highway, carrying millions of dollars in consumer electronics and fresh groceries to stores across the country. But according to our enterprise system, those trucks did not exist. The live tracking data had completely vanished into thin air. The dispatchers could not see where the trucks were, warehouse workers did not know when they would arrive, and customers were left completely in the dark. Within an hour, the panic spread like wildfire through every department in our building. It wasn't just Omnimart that was affected. The core server, completely abandoned without my nightly manual token refresh, had officially entered its automatic lockdown mode. The automated script James bought had completely crashed, unable to handle the security firewall. It truly believed it was defending itself against a hostile hacker attack, and it began hiding data at an alarming speed. By noon, the digital black hole grew even wider and more destructive. Active customer profiles started disappearing by the dozens. Freight billing records vanished from the accounting system, making it completely impossible to see who owed us money or which drivers needed to be paid. Digital shipping contracts that had taken our sales team months to secure suddenly turned into corrupted, unreadable files. Regional managers across the country were staring at gray screens with the words "data error" flashing in bright red text. 4,000 delivery trucks were effectively stranded on the nation's highways, operating completely blind without any routing instructions or digital manifests. James Miller was thrown into an immediate, blind panic. The smooth, calm corporate voice he used in boardroom presentations disappeared instantly, replaced by absolute terror. He paced around his glass office, running his hands through his hair, watching his bright future slip away. He gathered his team of young assistants and desperately ordered them to use his new offshore automation software to override the system lock. But James did not understand the fundamental laws of the technology he was trying to control. Because he had completely deleted my root administrative account during his public show on Tuesday morning, his new software was completely useless. The cheap automation script did not have the master security clearance required to access the core database layers of the vault. It was like trying to open a high-tech bank vault with a cheap plastic house key. The software could only scratch at the very surface of the system, while deep underneath, the server continued to quarantine more and more vital files every single minute. James spent the entire afternoon sweating through his expensive tailored suit, screaming over the phone at his offshore software developers in a frantic attempt to find a solution. But the developers could do absolutely nothing. They told him that the system was locked from the inside, and without the original master key that built the architecture, there was no way to force the database open without permanently destroying all the customer records. The office turned into a scene of complete, unmitigated chaos. Phones were ringing off the hooks as angry corporate executives from Fortune 500 companies demanded answers about their missing cargo. The customer service team was reduced to tears by the endless wave of screaming clients. Millions of dollars in shipping data were vanishing from our screens every hour. And the modern automated paradise that James had promised to the board of directors had transformed into an absolute nightmare. The company was bleeding money. Its professional reputation was dying in real time, and James Miller was left staring at a disaster that he had completely created with a single arrogant click of his mouse. By Friday morning, the situation at Nexus Fleet Logistics reached a boiling point. The chief executive officer, Arthur, finally discovered the full scale of the disaster. He had been flooded with angry calls from board members and the CEOs of our biggest clients. When he saw a sea of blank screens, he nearly had a heart attack. The entire enterprise system was collapsing. Our largest clients were already preparing multi-million-dollar lawsuits for lost freight and broken contracts. Arthur immediately stormed down to the operations floor and confronted James in front of the remaining staff. He demanded to know why the automated system failed. With his back completely against the wall, James was forced to admit the truth. He confessed that he had removed me from the servers to cut costs and that he had deleted my root administrative account. He had to tell the CEO that the system was locked from the inside and that he had no way to log back in. While this corporate storm tore the office apart, I was living in a completely different world. At exactly 10:30 a.m., I was walking down the peaceful aisle of my local grocery store, picking out fresh vegetables for dinner. My mind was completely clear, and I felt lighter than I had in years. Suddenly, the phone in my purse began to vibrate. I pulled it out and looked at the screen. I did not recognize the number, but I had a very strong feeling I knew exactly who it was. I slid my finger across the glass and placed the phone to my ear. "Hello?" I said, keeping my voice perfectly calm and steady. "Margaret? Margaret, is that you?" It was James, but the voice coming through the speaker did not sound like the polished, arrogant young executive who had humiliated me on Tuesday. The smooth corporate buzzwords were completely gone. His voice was trembling, shaking with pure, unadulterated terror. He sounded like a desperate man standing on the edge of a cliff. "Yes, James. This is Margaret," I replied, pausing by a display of red apples. "Margaret, thank God," he gasped, breathing heavily. "We have a massive emergency at the office. The vault server has encountered a weird technical glitch. All the customer data and truck tracking files have disappeared. The automation script is stuck. I need you to log in remotely right now and fix the server error. If you get the system back online before the afternoon shipping window, I am willing to overlook your sudden resignation. We can forget all about our disagreement from earlier this week, and you can come back to your old job on Monday morning." I stood in the middle of the grocery aisle, a quiet smile spreading across my face. The sheer desperation in his voice was incredibly satisfying, but I did not let my emotions show. I kept my tone completely composed and professional. "James," I said slowly, "I did not resign. You shared your screen and publicly revoked my master administrative credentials to show everyone your power. You told 42 people that my era was over and that your new software would handle everything. Because you deleted my root account, I no longer have a way to log into the database even if I wanted to help you. I am a stranger to that network now. Margaret, please. James begged, completely shedding any remaining drop of his pride. The CEO is standing right next to me. The whole company is going under. If we don't fix this today, we lose Omnimart and the board will ruin my career. Tell me what to do. Give me the master password or tell me how to bypass the security firewall. I cannot do that, James, I replied calmly. I built that system to protect our data, and it is doing exactly what it was programmed to do when abandoned. If Nexus Fleet Logistics truly wants my help to resolve this disaster, the Chief Executive Officer must call my personal line himself, and the conversation will happen entirely on my own terms. Goodbye, James. Without waiting for him to reply, I pressed the red button on my screen and ended the call. I placed my phone back into my purse, took a deep breath, and continued shopping for my groceries. I knew the phone would ring again very soon. Exactly 10 minutes later, while loading groceries into my car, my phone rang again. It was Arthur Pendleton, the Chief Executive Officer of Nexus Fleet Logistics. I answered with the same calm, steady tone I had used with James. "Hello, Arthur," I said quietly. "Margaret, I am so incredibly sorry," Arthur began, his voice sounding completely defeated. He sounded like a desperate leader watching his life's work slide into ruin. "I apologize for Tuesday morning. I had no idea James was going to revoke your access, or that he planned to replace you with an unverified script. It was a massive mistake. Please, we need you to come back. Name your salary. I will double your previous pay if you restore the servers today." I sat in my car listening to the CEO beg. It was the ultimate moment of validation. My quiet hard work had been the only thing keeping the company alive all these years. But returning as a full-time employee was a trap. They would just try to automate my role again once the crisis was over. "Arthur, I appreciate your apology," I said firmly. "But I will not return full-time. My time as an employee is permanently over. However, I am willing to save your company today as an outside consultant if you agree to my exact terms right now." "Anything, Margaret," Arthur pleaded. "Just tell me what you need. My consulting rate is $500 an hour. You must sign a contract guaranteeing a minimum of 80 hours, paid completely upfront before I type a single line of code. And, third, James Miller must be fired immediately for gross operational negligence. He cannot step foot in that building ever again." There was a heavy silence. Arthur knew my demands were incredibly steep, but every hour his servers stayed dark cost the company hundreds of thousands of dollars in client penalties. He had no choice, and he knew it. "We agree, Margaret," Arthur sighed. "I will have legal email the contract and wire the payment within 5 minutes. James is already being escorted out of the building by security. The signed contract and the $40,000 wire transfer hit my account minutes later. I drove home, walked into my living room, and sat on the couch with my laptop. Because Arthur had restored my master access, I logged into the Vault database. I did not have to write complex new code. I simply applied my unique manual security token and initiated the database handshakes I had performed every night for 15 years. In less than 2 hours, the firewall recognized my master key, the lockdown ended, and all the disappearing customer profiles flooded back onto the company screens. The system was completely healed. James Miller was publicly fired in absolute disgrace. Because the story of his failure spread quickly through the tight-knit logistics industry, his reputation was completely ruined, and no major firm would ever hire him again. He became a cautionary tale about corporate arrogance. I used that massive consulting payout to completely pay off my mortgage. I officially opened my own independent data consulting firm, working from the comfort of my home. Today, I choose my own hours, set my own high rates, and companies pay me thousands just to audit their systems. James's decision to remove me was the greatest gift he could have given me. It taught me a powerful, mature lesson. Never stay where your hard work is ignored, and never spend your life protecting people who view you as a disposable number. Sometimes you have to let the roof collapse so they can see who was holding up the house.